Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's discussion, I need to provide important context. If you are new to this ongoing investigation, it is essential that you first watch my previous video, Roddenberry Fans' Serious Questions for Super Godzilla 12. That video contains the documented allegations regarding SG12, including claims of swatting and other serious misconduct, which serve as the necessary record for this discussion. I have provided a link to that video in the description below. Please pause here, watch that record of events first, and then return here to join me for this second analytical phase of our study. Hello, Super Godzilla 12. It's me, the Orion Broadcast. I'm reaching out to move past our previous conflicts and discuss something I've been reflecting on: the psychology behind how we engage with the media we love and the media we hate. I've personally realized that my long-standing dislike for Star Wars is not a grievance I've outgrown. It is a permanent fixture of my worldview. As someone deeply invested in aerospace design and high technology mastery, I find the space opera's casual, often sloppy approach to spaceflight logic fundamentally at odds with the technical rigor I value. While others see space fantasy, I see a narrative that actively cautions against or simplifies the very engineering systemizing that defines my passion. It remains an existential annoyance that threatens my perspective, and I expect it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. However, this got me thinking about your scorn for The Lion King. Could there be a similar dynamic at play? Does the complex, messy, and nuanced morality of The Lion King feel like an existential threat to the structured, cleaner worlds you resonate with, like Barney and Friends, My Little Pony, or the raw and vulnerable power of Kaiju cinema? When I first spoke out about my own frustrations regarding Star Wars in the late 1990s, I was not met with understanding. I was invalidated, labeled as having a mental illness. I was even punished for my disdain, which only deepened my resentment. I share this because I wonder if you face similar pressures. Have you ever felt that your own dislikes were met with attempts to correct your taste by force? I'm curious if your current approach, specifically the desire to see certain characters punished for the discomfort they cause you, is a defensive reaction to having your own taste dismissed so harshly in the past. As much as you hate young Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa, I have spent years grappling with a visceral, reactive hatred of my own towards the Star Wars prequels, specifically the speciesist mistreatment of Kolo Clawfish as a perceived scourge triggered in me a profound punitive urge, a desire to see the entire world of Naboo punished for that distress. This eventually culminated in my Titan vs. Star Wars Endgame fantasy called the 2026 Dredge Endgame that is occurring as of this recording, where I imagine the Dredge mothership Alahanea blowing up Naboo for causing me such personal indignation. I don't shy away from admitting that because I recognize these impulses for what they are: the product of being pathologized from my taste in the 1990s, where my intense aversions were labeled as mental illness rather than being met with the space to process them. However, there is a divergence in how we handle that inheritance. I channeled that discomfort into creative work, developing a non-binary trans-feminine Kolo Clawfish character named Stevie Siren. Through Stevie, I explore empathy while simultaneously holding on to my vision of the Alahanea as a necessary cosmic immune system vessel against the living force's arrogance. I learned to hold both, the creative empathy and the unyielding critical stance. Absolving these impulses is the first step towards maturity, but I want to be clear: explaining the origins of my punitive urges does not absolve me of my past hostility. I acknowledge those thoughts as a consequence of my history, but I choose to own them rather than to weaponize them against other people. The question is, do you have the courage to examine your own punitive fantasies with the same level of transparency? I believe that your rhetoric is most likely the exact same protective anger I felt. However, our paths diverge. Where you have turned those impulses outward, demanding that others accept your vitriol as objective critique, I've spent 2 decades fighting to understand mine. I was terrified by my own capacity for those punitive thoughts. I chose to hold myself accountable rather than to weaponize my discomfort against others. I've spent the last few years unlearning the toxic get over it lessons from the 1990s. I now practice self validation. I accept my dislikes as part of my perspective, but there is a crucial distinction. I use that self validation to understand myself, while you've appeared to use your critiques as a weapon to impose your comfort zone on others. I've moved towards a place where I can acknowledge my biases without needing to create a hostile environment to protect them. For instance, in November 2011, when a user requested a depiction of a Sando Aqua Monster, a creature I find repulsive, as a Jedi, specifically in response to my Cloverfield vs. Sando Aqua Monster thread, I could have retaliated, but I didn't. I recognize that her appreciation was hers to hold, independent of my aversion. That choice was an act of maturity. I'm curious, do you feel that the need to control those who defend the media you dislike is a necessary component of your critique? Or is it possible that your current framework prevents you from actually engaging with the substance of what people are actually saying to you? I want to be clear. I am not arguing against the act of criticism itself, including The Lion King. Like David Brin, I subscribe to the critic principle. Criticism is the only known antidote to error, which is one reason I endorse and share David Brin's skepticism of Star Wars. True maturity in criticism is the act of prioritizing facts over the urge to punish. I also want to address the consequences of our history. The commentary-driven conflicts that have surrounded our interactions have had real, tangible impacts on my life. I've observed your own frustration when others, like Blackbuster Critic in late 2012, challenged you. It is a demonstrable fact that you would find being on the receiving end of such a campaign entirely intolerable. This leads to a simple, objective question of reciprocity. If one wishes to avoid being subjected to harassment, one must not initiate it against others. Looking back, I want to take full accountability for my own part in the hostility of our past exchanges, specifically regarding our initial spring 2011 disagreement over The Lion King. My choice to flame your Lion King 2 review was impulsive and defensive, a reaction rooted in my own struggles with self-validation at the time rather than a genuine engagement with your perspective. I regret that instead of offering well-articulated criticism, I chose to be combative. I have spent the last few years unlearning those reactive habits. I now believe that maturity in criticism is about the ability to express one's position clearly and objectively, without the need to weaponize it or demand that others conform to it. I recognize a missed opportunity for a more constructive exchange. Had we navigated our disagreements through open discourse, such as by engaging with the ecological critiques of The Lion King, or by involving mutual peers like John Man 4 and 8, at least by mention, the dynamic would have shifted. Had you chosen to challenge my perspective with inquiry instead of mockery, it would have prompted me to move beyond my own defensive self-invalidation and definitely would have prevented my aforementioned Dredge endgame. That shift would have provided the necessary space to discard the reflexive, self-invalidating lessons of my past, allowing me to focus on the substance of your arguments rather than the hostility of your delivery. Regardless of your response, my focus moving forward is on maintaining professional boundaries and objective analysis. I am stating this for the record to close the door on our history of unproductive conflict. I hope this clarifies the standard of discourse I now hold myself to. By weaponizing drama against me, you violated the very standard of conduct central to genuine criticism and discussion. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for you to recognize that your actions were a wrong choice, and that choosing to inflict such a toll on another person is irreconcilable with the persona of a fair and reasonable critic.